The Girl Who Knocked at 13 past midnight. Part 1. The First Knock. I've never believed in curses. Not the kind people whisper about on Friday the 13th. Black cats, broken mirrors, walking under ladders. Just silly superstitions to keep kids in line. But that was before the knocks began. Before she came. It started almost 10 years ago. Back then, I was living alone in a rented house on the outskirts of a small town in Pennsylvania. The kind of quiet town that looks peaceful during the day. Clean streets, friendly neighbors, porch lights glowing amber in the evening. But at night, it becomes something else. Empty. Too quiet. Like the whole place is holding its breath. I'd just gone through a divorce. My ex-wife, Marissa, took the city job offer and left, and I stayed behind. I needed space. I needed quiet. That house gave me both. It was an old two-story built sometime in the 1920s, with wooden floors that creaked no matter how careful you walked, and a basement that smelled like rain and rust. The kind of place that felt alive, even when it wasn't. The first Friday the 13th after I moved in, I didn't even realize what day it was. It was just another night. I remember I had been up late working on some invoices for my small contracting business. Around midnight, I shut off the computer, brushed my teeth, and started heading upstairs. That's when I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 sharp taps on the front door. Nothing unusual by itself, except it was 12:13 a.m. I checked the clock on the microwave, thinking maybe it was some drunk neighbor or a delivery screw-up. But nobody delivers packages at midnight. And the sound, there was something off about it. Too rhythmic, too deliberate. I walked slowly to the door, not sure whether to be cautious or annoyed. The porch light was on, but when I looked through the peephole, there was nothing there. Just the faint mist hanging over the front yard. I opened the door halfway, just enough to peek out. No one. The road beyond the mailbox was empty. Not a single car. I stepped out barefoot, feeling the cold wood on the porch under my feet. The air smelled like wet leaves. "Hello?" I called out. Nothing. I figured maybe some kids were pulling a prank, knock and run. It wouldn't be the first time bored teenagers had wandered through that neighborhood. So I laughed to myself, locked up, and went to bed. But that wasn't the end of it. The next morning, I noticed something strange. On the porch railing, right beside the door, was a small, perfect handprint. It was pale, small enough to belong to a child, but smeared faintly with something dark. Maybe dirt, maybe pash. I wiped it away, trying not to think too hard about it. That night passed quietly. Then another Friday the 13th rolled around, and right on schedule at 12:13 a.m. came the knocks again. Knock, knock, knock. 3 times. Always 3. I froze. It wasn't windy. There were no cars, no footsteps, just those slow, deliberate knocks and the same suffocating silence afterward. This time, I didn't open the door. I just stood there in the dark hallway, my heart pounding. For maybe 30 seconds, I heard it again, but softer. A voice. A girl's voice. "Can I come in?" It was so faint, I almost thought I had imagined it. High-pitched, trembling, like a child whispering through the crack of the door. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. "Please, it's cold out here." Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. There was no sound of shivering, no crunch of footsteps in the gravel, just that tiny voice hanging in the air. I backed away slowly, never taking my eyes off the door. I went upstairs, locked my bedroom door, and lay awake until dawn. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamed of a girl standing on the porch. She was wearing a white dress, soaked and muddy at the bottom. Her face was turned away, her hair matted with water. And when I tried to call out to her, she turned, but she had no eyes, just empty, black hollows. The next few months were quiet again. Sometimes I wondered if the stress had just gotten to me. Maybe I'd fallen asleep at my desk that night, dreamed the whole thing. That's what I told myself, anyway. Then, the following year, another Friday the 13th brought it all back. This time, I was ready. I had set up a small camera on the porch, motion activated, connected to my phone. I wanted to catch whoever was doing it. At 12:13 a.m., right on cue. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. My stomach dropped. The same pattern, the same sound. I grabbed my phone, opened the live feed. For a second, I thought the app had crashed because the screen was just black. But then I noticed it wasn't the camera. It was the porch light. It had gone out. The power hadn't flickered, only the porch light. I turned up the brightness of my phone, squinting. That's when I saw her. A small figure standing directly in front of the door. Long dark hair, bare feet, the same white dress from my dream. She wasn't moving, just standing there, still as stone. Then she looked up, right into the camera, and smiled. The feed glitched, the image warped into static. My phone vibrated with an alert from the motion sensor. Face detected. When the video resumed, she was gone.
I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I checked the footage again, trying to convince myself it was just some kid. But the timestamp read 12:13 a.m. exactly. And the motion log said something that made my blood run cold. Face detected. Distance 0.2 meters. 0.2 meters. That meant she had been right up against the lens, practically pressing her face to it. I couldn't shake the image. That pale face, that grin. I deleted the footage, thinking maybe that would help. It didn't. Over the next few days, I started noticing other things around the house. Lights flickering. The faint sound of knocking when I was in the shower or the basement. And sometimes, when I passed the front door late at night, I could swear I smelled damp earth, like wet soil after a storm. I tried to rationalize everything. Faulty wiring, bad plumbing, stress. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. And I was starting to believe that whatever she wasn't just some prankster. 3 years went by. I moved to another house 2 towns over. A new start. For a while, it worked. I didn't hear the knocks, didn't dream of her. Until one night last spring, I woke up suddenly. It was raining outside. The clock on my nightstand read 12:13 a.m. And then came the sound. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow taps. But this time, not from the front door. It was coming from inside the house. Somewhere downstairs. My heart hammered as I sat up, listening. The sound came again, closer now. I grabbed the baseball bat from beside the bed and crept down the stairs. The air felt colder, heavier. My breath fogged in the dark. When I reached the living room, I realized the knocking wasn't random. It was coming from the basement door. I turned on the light. There, at the bottom edge of the door, I saw something that made every muscle in my body lock up. A shadow. 2 small bare feet, facing the door from the other side. Then came the voice. That same fragile whisper from years ago. "Can I come in?" I ran. Didn't think. Didn't breathe. I bolted out the front door into the rain, got in my truck, and drove until the sun came up. By the time I got the courage to return home later that day, everything looked normal. The house was still. No sign of forced entry. No footprints. But on the basement door, 3 faint marks, like small fingernail scratches running down the wood. And scrawled between them, barely visible in the light, was something written in wet dirt. "You left me outside." I've since learned that the house I first lived in, the one where the knocking started, was built near the site of an old orphanage that burned down in 1932. 17 children died. Most of their names were forgotten, except one, a girl named Annabelle Creed, age 10. The only body they never found. According to the town records, the fire started on a Friday the 13th, and the time of the first emergency call, 12:13 a.m. I don't tell this story to scare people. I tell it because I need someone to believe me. Because last night I moved again. Different town, different house. No basement this time. I checked the locks twice, left the porch light on, and told myself it was finally over. Then, as the clock ticked past midnight, I sat in bed listening to the rain. And when the digital clock flipped to 12:13 a.m., I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. Followed by that same whispering voice. "Please, it's cold out here." After that last night, I promised myself I wouldn't ignore the signs anymore. You can move towns, change houses, even throw away everything you own, but you can't outrun something that isn't alive, especially when it knows your name. A week after that night, I was still sleeping with the lights on. Every creak in the floorboards, every gust of wind against the window made my chest tighten. I told myself it was just trauma, some kind of lingering paranoia from everything that happened before. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just fear. It was her. She had found me again. For days, I replayed the sound of that knocking in my head. Always 3 times, always at 12:13 a.m. The pattern never changed. I started noticing small things around the new house, too. Wet footprints on the porch after rainless nights, the faint smell of burnt wood near the hallway. And sometimes, when I passed a mirror, I'd swear I saw a shape standing behind me just for a fraction of a second. A girl-shaped blur, motionless, watching. At first I thought maybe I could reason with her. I know how insane that sounds, but when you're being haunted by something you can't explain, you start to grasp at anything that feels remotely human. So, I did something stupid. I decided to stay awake the next Friday the 13th, to wait for her. I prepared everything like I was setting a trap. Camera on the porch, another in the living room facing the front door, and my phone recording audio on the table just in case she spoke again. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. My family already thought I was struggling with post-divorce depression. If I told them a ghost was following me across counties, they'd probably check me into a hospital. At exactly 12:12 a.m., I turned off the lights and sat in the dark living room, staring at the front door. The second hand on my watch ticked louder than usual. 12:13. Knock, knock, knock. It still made me jump, even after all this time. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay still. Then came the voice. "Please, can I come in?" Her tone had changed. It wasn't trembling or sad anymore. It sounded calm, almost rehearsed. I gripped the edge of the couch, my eyes locked on the door. "I just want to talk," she said softly. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you before." That voice. It wasn't a child's anymore, still soft, but older, heavier, like it had matured over time, just like she had been waiting. "Who are you?" I asked finally. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then just one word. "Annabelle." My heart dropped. The name from the old fire records, the one they never found. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The air inside the house grew heavy and cold, like someone had left the door open on a winter night. Then she whispered again, almost breathing directly into the crack. "You left me outside." And that's when the door handle started to turn. I ran to it instinctively, slamming my hand against the lock, but it was already twisting on its own. The metal groaned, the bolt shifting slightly, even though I was holding it with all my strength. "Stop!" I shouted. The handle froze. For a moment, I thought maybe she'd gone, but then came something worse. The sound of fingernails scraping along the wood, slowly, up and down, like she was tracing the outline of the door. I stumbled back, shaking. The air was thick, damp, and the smell of smoke filled my lungs again. Not cigarette smoke, not burning food. It was the sharp, bitter smell of burnt flesh and wet timber. Then, from the other side of the door, she spoke again, almost whispering directly into the crack. "It hurts to burn." I felt my knees weaken. My hands trembled. She sounded like she was crying, but the sound wasn't quite human. It was like someone trying to mimic crying. The rhythm was wrong. The breaths were too shallow. Then the knocks started again, louder this time, faster, desperate, each one echoing through the house like hammer blows. Knock, knock, knock. I grabbed the camera from the table and aimed it toward the door. The feed flickered for a second, then stabilized. And what I saw made me freeze. There was a faint glow coming from under the door, like firelight, and in that glow, two small, shadowed feet facing inward. I didn't open the door. I couldn't. I just watched as the light faded. The knocks stopped, and the house went silent again. When I reviewed the camera footage later, I almost wished I hadn't, because when the light flickered across the wood, it illuminated something on the surface of the door that hadn't been there before. Words burned into the paint, so faint you'd miss them unless you paused at the exact right frame. 1:13 past midnight. You promised.
The following days blurred together. I didn't eat much, didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, that burnt white dress, that faint smile under the porch light. I tried reaching out to the local historical society, asking about the orphanage fire. They were polite, but hesitant. The woman on the phone said they didn't keep many records from that time. But when I mentioned Annabelle Creed's name, there was a long pause. "How did you say you found that name?" she asked. I told her about the newspaper clippings online. "That's strange," she said finally.
Those records were never digitized. Someone must have uploaded them recently. My stomach turned cold. Recently? Like, when? She said, "About 2 weeks ago." Then quietly, "On Friday the 13th. I knew then that whatever was happening wasn't random. It was deliberate. She was trying to be found. That night, I went into the garage and found an old wooden chest my landlord had left behind. It was filled with junk, tools, rusted nails, yellowed papers, but underneath it all, I found something that stopped me cold. A photograph. Old, sepia tone. A group of children in front of a brick building, the orphanage. They were all smiling, except for one. A girl standing at the end of the line, hair tied in a ribbon, dressed lighter than the others. Her face was blurred, like the camera had caught her moving, but even in the blur, her eyes seemed wrong. Too dark, too hollow. And scrawled on the back of the photo in messy handwriting, 13 past midnight. Let her in. That night, I didn't plan to open the door. I just wanted to understand. When 12:13 came, I sat in the hallway with the photo in my hand, staring at the door. My phone was recording again. The knock came. Gentle this time. Almost polite. Knock, knock, knock. Then the whisper. "Please, it's so cold." I hesitated. Every instinct told me to ignore it, to run, to hide, to never listen again. But something else inside me stirred. Pity, maybe. Curiosity. Guilt. After years of being hunted by her voice, I needed to know what she wanted, so I reached for the lock. The metal clicked. The door creaked open an inch. Cold air rushed in. My breath fogged instantly, and through the gap, I saw her. A small girl, pale as snow, barefoot with long black hair plastered to her cheeks. Her dress hung in tatters, edges singed and blackened. But her face was wrong. The eyes too deep, like pits that went on forever. Still, she smiled faintly. "Thank you," she whispered. I tried to speak, but my throat felt frozen. Then she stepped forward, and everything went dark. When I woke up, I was lying on the living room floor. The door was shut, locked. Morning light streamed through the window. My phone was still recording. The timer read 7 hours, 52 minutes. I scrubbed through the footage, fast-forwarding past hours of static, until something flickered at 12:14 a.m. The frame showed the door opening slightly, a shadow slipped through, small, human-shaped, then the camera went black, but the audio kept running. At 12:15, you could hear my voice, "Thank you," then silence. And after that, another voice, soft, whispering, the same voice that had haunted me for years. "You let me in." For weeks after, strange things began happening inside the house. Mirrors fogged up even when it wasn't humid. Cabinets opened by themselves. And sometimes when I passed by the hallway, I could hear quiet humming, a child's song with no melody I recognized. Neighbors began asking questions too. They said they'd seen a girl standing by my window some nights. When I told them I lived alone, they stopped talking to me altogether. One evening, while cleaning the kitchen, I noticed something scratched into the wooden table, letters carved shallowly, like by a small hand. Friday, 13, midnight. And below that, one word. Return. I think she's trying to tell me something. Maybe she wants me to find where she died or who left her behind when the fire started. Maybe she wants justice. Or maybe she just wants company. Either way, I know it isn't over, because tonight is another Friday the 13th. And as I sit here writing this, the clock on my wall just clicked past midnight. The air feels heavy again. The house is quiet. And now, as the second hand ticks towards 12:13, I hear it again. Knock, knock, knock. But this time, the sound isn't coming from the door. It's coming from inside the walls.
It's strange how quickly fear becomes routine. When the knocking started coming from inside the walls, I didn't even scream. I just sat there, frozen on the living room floor, listening to the sound move. 3 knocks, a pause, 3 more, closer this time. It was as if she wasn't trying to scare me anymore. She was looking for something, or someone. Maybe she already found it. Maybe it was me. The walls in that house were old, hollow, the kind that groan when the temperature drops. But that night, the knocking had rhythm, purpose. It traveled, room to room, circling the house like footsteps inside the drywall. I grabbed the flashlight and followed it, heart pounding in my ears. The sound moved toward the hallway, then stopped by the small door that led to the basement. The smell hit me before I even touched the handle. That same bitter scent of charred wood and wet ash. And underneath it, something faintly sweet, like decaying flowers. For a long minute, I just stood there, hand trembling on the doorknob. Then I heard her voice again. Down here. Soft, childlike. But the tone wasn't pleading anymore. It was inviting, almost relieved. I don't know why I went down those steps. Maybe I wanted it to end. Maybe I needed to know why she chose me. Each step creaked like it was protesting. The beam from my flashlight shook against the brick walls, catching dust and cobwebs. The basement was colder than I remembered. The air pressed against my chest, heavy and damp. When I reached the bottom, I saw something that made my stomach twist. A small wooden door I'd never noticed before, half rotted, almost hidden behind a stack of old paint cans. And on the front of it, carved roughly into the wood, were 3 numbers. 13. 13. I stood there staring at it until the flashlight flickered. That's when the knocking started again. But this time it was coming from behind the small door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Then silence. Then her voice. You opened it once. You have to finish it. I reached out with a shaking hand and touched the door. It was ice cold. When my fingers brushed against the carved numbers, they burned, like touching metal that had just come out of a fire. Then the whisper again. Please, let me out. I took a step back, every instinct in my body screaming not to do it. But then I noticed something on the floor. A faint trail of black ash leading from the door toward the furnace in the corner of the room. And beside it, half buried in the dirt, something glinted under my flashlight. A small silver locket. Inside was a photograph. A man a woman, and a little girl. The same face from the old orphanage picture. Annabelle. But the man, I recognized him. It was the landlord who'd rented me this house. My blood ran cold. I remembered something he'd said when I first moved in. A passing comment about keeping the place quiet after midnight. I thought he was just joking. I looked closer at the back of the photo, and there was handwriting again. This time newer, darker. Forgive me. That's when the truth started piecing itself together. Not all at once, but like fragments rising to the surface of a dark lake. The orphanage fire hadn't been an accident. The landlord, his name was Henry Creed, he wasn't just the owner. He was Annabelle's father. He'd left her there that night when the fire broke out, locked inside to cover his own crime. And now, every Friday the 13th, she came back, looking for him. But she'd found me instead, because I was living in his house, the same place where he died 10 years later, the same basement where I now stood. The knocking behind the door grew louder, faster. I stumbled backward, hitting the furnace. "Annabelle!" I shouted. "He's gone! Your father's gone!" The knocking stopped. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then a whisper, so close it felt like it was right beside my ear. "No, he's not." The air went cold. My breath fogged in front of me. And then slowly, the small wooden door creaked open on its own. Inside was darkness. Thick. Absolute. And in that darkness, I saw movement. A figure stepping forward, small and fragile. Her face pale, her eyes burning faintly red in the beam of my light. "Why did he leave me?" she whispered. Her skin was cracked, charred in places, glowing faintly with embers beneath. And yet there was something heartbreakingly human in her voice. I couldn't answer. I wanted to tell her she didn't deserve what happened, that none of it was her fault, but before I could speak, she stepped closer, and the heat around her surged. The walls began to blacken. Smoke filled the basement. And for a split second, I saw her not as a ghost, but as she must have been that night. Trapped, burning, screaming for someone to open the door. "Please," she sobbed. "It hurts." I reached toward her instinctively. The moment my hand passed through the air between us, I felt fire lick across my skin. Not real flame, but something deeper. A memory of pain. And then everything went white.
When I came to, I was lying at the bottom of the basement stairs. The air was clear again. No smoke, no smell of ash. The small door was gone. Just a solid wall of concrete, like it had never existed. I crawled up the stairs, shaking, barely able to breathe. When I reached the living room, I saw something waiting on the table. The silver locket, clean, untarnished, and beside it, written in soot on the tabletop, "Thank you." For days afterward, the house was silent. No knocking, no whispers. I thought maybe it was over, that I'd finally given her peace. Until the next Friday the 13th. It started at exactly 12:13 a.m. 3 knocks, but not at the front door this time, at the window. I froze, staring at the curtains. The knocking came again, harder. I reached for the camera, pressed record, and pulled the curtain aside. No one there. Just the faint outline of small handprints in the condensation on the glass. And in the reflection, behind me, a shadow. Small, still, watching. That was the last night I stayed in that house. I packed what I could and drove until the sun came up. But the thing about curses, they don't stay behind. They follow the promise. And I had made one the moment I opened that door. You have to finish it, she had said. Now, months later, I live in a small apartment across the state. Different city, different walls. But every night, I still wake up at the same time, 12:13 a.m. Sometimes it's quiet. Other nights, I hear faint knocks somewhere in the distance. Once I heard a whisper through the vent above my bed. Are you still there? I tried ignoring it. Then one morning, I found something in the hallway outside my apartment door. A small envelope, old and singed around the edges. Inside was a photo. The same orphanage, the same group of children. But this time, the girl wasn't blurred. She was smiling. And next to her, standing where I hadn't noticed before, was someone else. A man. Tall, dark hair, wearing my clothes. Me. I dropped the photo, heart pounding, backing away. As it hit the floor, I noticed something scribbled on the back in fresh ink. It's your turn to knock. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat in bed waiting. The clock ticked. 12:11, 12:12. When the minute hand reached 12:13, I felt it, a pressure in the air, heavy and cold. From somewhere deep inside the apartment, 3 knocks echoed through the walls. Knock, knock, knock. And then in my own voice, whispering through the dark, "Please, can I come in?"